Okay, so then next, let's look at our rules for consideration. All right, so here's our intro on this section. For all the hypos we've done so far, we've basically said assume consideration is met. And for a lot of these hypos, consideration was a no-brainer. In most of the essays that you'll be doing, like 90% of them, consideration is a slam dunk no-brainer. I contract to sell you my car. Consideration is met. There's an exchange of the money in exchange for the car. Both of our benefit to each party. So do realize on your essays, consideration is typically a slam dunk. With that said, on the MBE, however, they may and they will have a question or two that's testing on one of these like nuanced aspects of the consideration rule. So you do want some comfort level with these concepts. With that said, let's look at our general rule for consideration. For a contract to be formed, there must be consideration or a consideration substitute. Consideration must be on both sides, so both parties to the agreement must have consideration. Consideration is a bargain for exchange in which both parties receive either a benefit or a legal detriment from the other. Under bargain for exchange, it must be proven that each promised induced the other. So there's really two things in that general rule. The two things are that each party receives either a benefit or the other party's legal detriment. And then the second thing is that there has to be mutual inducement. Okay? I think, we're going to run through some quick hypos on that so we can see it. But really quickly, I know we don't have anything. We can talk about this. Each party gets a benefit or a legal detriment. And 9.9 out of 10 hypos you're going to be doing, you're going to be dealing with the benefits of both sides. I promise to clean Ani's house for $10,000. I get the benefit of the money. She gets the benefit of the house cleaning. Benefit on both sides. Mutual inducement. My promise to clean is induced by her promise to pay, and vice versa. Her promise to pay is induced by my promise to clean. Nobody's just signing up to clean somebody's house, and nobody's in this situation is just signing up to give me $10,000. That's what that mutual inducement is. And there's a benefit on both sides. The legal detriment, again, very rarely comes up, and that's the context in which, right, you see, remember these hypos, I give $50,000 to Clarence for him to no longer go to pool parties. Clarence, is that going to be consideration on both sides?
No, because I have no legal obligation or duty to go to a pool party.
So that's not exactly how the rule works. This actually is going to be consideration, assuming you have the legal right to go to pool parties. And you do have the legal right to go to pool parties. So since you're giving up that right to me, that will be consideration. What you were thinking is more so than the fact pattern where I give Clarence $50,000 if he promises to not kill anybody. That's not going to be consideration because you have no legal ability to do that, so I'm not really getting anything from you. But when you're giving up something that you otherwise have the legal right to do, then that will satisfy the consideration when you're giving that up to somebody else.
I was thinking of that case with the little girl that the uncle asked her something, the normal contract was closed. But I think I'm still confused. The gift promise case.
Exactly. And so and that's the thing where it's different, where it's just like, that's more of like I give you $50,000 if you graduate from school with all A's, right? That's just going to be more or less a gift, but the uncle is not receiving anything in that context. So that there is a fine line there, but she's not necessarily giving up anything that's a legal detriment of hers. He's making that promise. So yeah, that's that gift scenario there.
What? I guess I got confused on the party that was involved. What is the benefit that you are getting from me not going to the pool party?
So that's the thing, is like I'm not getting a benefit, but each party must get either a benefit or receive the legal detriment of the other party. So you're receiving the benefit of the money. I am receiving not a benefit, but your legal detriment of no longer being able to go to pool parties, which you would lawfully be able to do otherwise. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So each side must get a benefit or legal detriment. Again, that's honestly a little bit more than what you'll probably be tested on, but it's good to feel comfortable with that because I know it can get a little tricky, but they don't really spend a lot of time on consideration, especially the legal detriment aspect of it. But definitely, right, get comfortable with it. Look at these notes, right? A legal detriment is a legal right to do something that one gives up. Okay, we talked about that. A benefit is any type of benefit that one may receive, goods, money, services, right? Whatever. That third note, put a star next to that third note. A promise to surrender a legal claim is sufficient consideration to support a return promise, even if that claim, that legal claim, turns out to be invalid, so long as the person surrendering the claim had a good faith belief in its validity. Okay, so take a note. That note was put in there because that comes from multiple choice questions. That is a rule. Surrendering a good faith legal claim. All right, so that's our general rule. Running through the rest of the rules, what do we have? Adequacy of consideration. Basically, courts will not look into adequacy of consideration. I promised to sell Sasha my house for $2. It's like, well, that's a pretty good deal. $2 for a whole house. Is that going to be valid consideration on both sides? Yes, right? The idea there is I'm getting the $2. She's getting the house. That is a benefit to both sides. The fact that it's, right, not very equal, right, on both sides, or not fair to both sides, that's not for the courts to get into. Things that are not consideration, illusory promise, you have an example in there. You can go through that. Gifts, gave a quick example of that. I will give you, $50,000 if you, right, do well in school and end up graduating. There's no consideration for that gift giver in that situation. So things that are gifts are not going to be consideration on both sides. Then you have past consideration and you have pre-existing duty. So you want to star those. Be prepared to come across. That's really what they like to test. One of these nuanced ones here and there on the MBE is likely a past consideration or pre-existing duty situation. Let's go through the rest of these rules and then we'll do a few hypos. Substitute for consideration required. Remember, there must either be consideration or a consideration substitute. There's only one substitute, and that is promissory estoppel. It's the same elements of detrimental reliance, coming back to this notion of fairness, right? So even though there is no consideration, this person relied on it to their detriment, right? The reliance was reasonable. The other person knew that this promisee would rely. And so now we need to enforce this promise to avoid injustice. So this is when you need to feel bad for somebody. Even though there was no consideration, maybe we still want to find consideration for the purpose of making this contract valid. Okay? That's how promissory estoppel works. You'll see it in action. But that's what you want to think of. Oh, there's no consideration here, right? And maybe the example is the uncle says to the daughter, hey, or to the niece, I'll give you $50,000 if you graduate from undergrad, if you stay in school and finish school. Well, the daughter was then ultimately offered a modeling job while she was in undergrad. In order to accept it, she would have had to withdraw from school. That modeling job would have paid her $40,000, but she turned it down so she could finish school. And then her uncle never ends up paying her. She sues the uncle for breach of contract. The uncle, to avoid contract liability, is going to say that there was no consideration, that this was merely a gift. Well, the daughter's going to say, all right, even if there is no consideration, we're going to apply a consideration substitute, and that's promissory estoppel. That here, I relied on his promise to my detriment because I gave up the modeling gig. That reliance was reasonable because this was my uncle and I had no reasons to believe that he would not in fact give me that money upon graduation. The uncle should have known that the niece would rely on that promise because why wouldn't she? And then therefore, under these circumstances, right, that she did not go forward with that modeling gig and get that 40,000, to avoid injustice here, we're going to make the argument that we should find consideration to be met. That's how that works. All right. Before I move forward on with the essay and MBE tips, any quick questions on consideration? I know we're going through that section pretty quickly. Again, if you want to, you can slow down a little bit in your review, but it's pretty straightforward stuff. And again, we're going to do some hypos in a second to make sure some of these more tested principles are ironed out. But look at these essay and MBE tips. This is some of the new and improved value that the blueprints have, that after all of this research, I'm baking in a lot of these things that you will expect to see. So consideration is a slam dunk issue on most essays and MBEs. However, MBEs like to test some of the nuances. Here's a list of some triggers to look out for to identify a consideration-focused question. So I'm not going to go through the entire list. Again, you can go through that on your own, but that is what I saw come up when they do test it, so you can have these things to look out for. All right, and then we'll come back to the note on formation. Let's do a few hypos on consideration. We're not going to do all of these, just some of them. Let's go with number 1. Let's go with Francesca. Can you... Hello?
Yeah, I kind of did have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Popped up from a statement. Just kind of changing your hypo about me a little bit. If it was during COVID, when pool parties were illegal or not going on, and you're saying, give me $50,000 to not go to a pool party, but I don't have the legal right to go to a pool party, then that's a gift promise, right?
No. In that case, that is consideration.
But I don't have the legal right to go to a pool party.
Oh, I'm sorry.
COVID is stopped.
Yeah, hold on. In that situation, yeah, it's not consideration now.
Okay, perfect.
Because you don't have the legal ability to do it. So you're not giving up something that you otherwise have the legal ability to do.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. All right, cool. Let's go with Francesca. Francesca, can you read number 1 for me, please?
Yes. So in Nermeen, it hits Kareem while both are driving on the freeway. The two get out of the car, and Nermeen, I hope I'm saying that right. Nermeen says, I will pay you $1,000 right now if you promise not to sue me. Kareem accepts the offer. Nermeen later refuses to pay. Is Kareem entitled to the $1,000?
Okay, what you think?
I think he is. And I think there is some, well, to go down the, to break it down, I guess.
Yeah.
So I will pay you $1,000 right now if you promise not to sue me. And then Kareem accepts so it says Kareem accepts the offer, which is a valid
Acceptance.
offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's acceptance. And then later he refuses to pay.
So let me walk you through it, because you kind of have it, but you're trying to get the structure, but we're losing it a little bit. Yeah. So first off, is there a valid offer? I will pay you $1,000 if you promise not to sue me. That's a valid offer. Then was there acceptance? It just says straight up it was an acceptance. So offer and acceptance is slam dunk. Then we get to consideration. Both parties must receive a benefit or legal detriment, and there must be mutual inducement. So this question is focusing on number 1. And are we going to have consideration? Is each party receiving a benefit here?
Yes.
Okay. What's that?
Well, Kareem is he's going to pay the $1,000, and then in exchange, in order for him not to get sued, I guess.
Yeah, and so Kareem accepts the offer where Nermeen is going to pay him the $1,000, so he gets $1,000.
He gets $1,000, yeah.
And then what does Nermeen get? Nermeen gets him surrendering his legal claim. This could kind of be a legal detriment, however you want to label it. You don't have to label it as benefit or legal detriment. You just need to remember and know that promising to not sue when you have a good faith belief of a legal claim, that does satisfy the consideration requirement on behalf of one side. So that was that example being illustrated, that surrendering your ability to sue is going to satisfy consideration.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep. Number 2, let's go back with Evelyn.
All right. Nermeen is driving with her husband. husband as the passenger when she hits Kareem while driving on the freeway. The husband gets out of the car and says, I will pay you $1,000 for all of this. I'm so sorry. Kareem accepts the offer. The husband later refuses to pay. Is Kareem entitled to the $1,000?
So remember, all roads lead to, right, whether or not there was a breach of contract. In order to know breach of contract, you got to know if there is a contract. So remember, don't get thrown off by the call of the question. In most scenarios, you're going through the same, right? Was there a valid contract to begin with?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I guess, sorry, the question is throwing me off, but I'll say there was no consideration, so there's no.
And what makes this different from number one? Why is there no consideration here?
Because they're not getting anything in exchange for the $1,000.
Exactly. And who's they?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. The names kind of threw me off.
Yeah. So you had Nermeen and husband in one car, and then hits Kareem. So they hit them. Husband gets out, makes the offer to Kareem of like, hey, I'll give you $1,000 for all of this. And then Kareem says, I accept. But then husband later refuses to pay. Is he obligated to do so? No, because he did make an offer here. Sure, it was accepted. But however, husband has not received anything here. And this differs from number one in that there was no promise not to sue on behalf of Kareem. There was no consideration for husband. So therefore, a valid contract was not formed. Maybe will there be grounds for promissory estoppel as a substitute? Probably not. You would discuss it because you have no consideration. But there's nothing to say that Kareem has relied to his detriment. So this is a good lesson to like, don't get trigger happy with detrimental reliance thinking in all scenarios it must apply. You really need to hit all of those elements. Here, I probably would not end up applying it, but you could definitely argue it. Okay, so let's go now with we're going to skip a few. You guys can do these on your own. Skip 3 and 4. Let's go to number 5. Jordan, can you do number 5 for me, please?
Yeah, on page 17, right?
I don't have different pages for the hypos. So yeah, Dante is walking home.
18.
Got it, okay. Dante is walking home when he sees an elderly woman struggling to get her brand new TV in the house. Dante stops to help the woman. He spends an hour getting the TV in the house, setting it up, and showing her the basics on how to use it. The next day, Dante runs into the woman again, and the woman says, "Hey, honey, I'm going to pay you $100 for helping me with the TV yesterday."
Oh yeah.
That's how much the Greek squad at Best Buy will charge. The elderly woman then dies, and Dante sues her estate to recover for $100.
Oh. So let me erase this. What's your gut instinct? What's your first thought, Jordan? Do we have?
I read it one more time.
Okay, go for it. Read it to yourself.
I would say yes.
Okay, so this, and let me double check.
Wait. No, I would say no, actually.
Yeah, this is going to be a situation, as I said, of past consideration. And this really goes hand in hand with the concept of mutual inducement. What happened, right? Initially, Dante decided to help the elderly lady, woman, get her stuff into her home. So here, was that induced? Was his decision to do so induced by being paid that $100?
No, it wasn't.
Exactly. He was just doing that out of the kindness of his heart. So then later, when then she made the offer of, I'm giving you $100 for all that help that you did yesterday, that is then what the issue is. At this time, the consideration that she received is past consideration. And that goes again hand in hand with mutual inducement, right? His offer to help, right, was not induced by her offering to pay. That's what you need in a contract. It's like, had this changed where it's like he approached her and said, hey, I see you're struggling here, older lady. You want to give me $100 and I'll get this TV into your house. Then there you have mutual inducement, right? So past consideration, Pretty straightforward there. Look for that issue with mutual inducement. All right, let's finish up. Shane, go ahead and do number 6 for me, please. Oh, we have a question? Real quick, Shane. Ani, question?
Yeah, if you don't mind, would the $100 be a gift then? Or not in this scenario?
Sure, right? You could analyze further that, okay, then so ultimately that turns into a gift, but at that point, you're really focused on past consideration as your topic, and that's the reason why there is no consideration. You don't necessarily need to follow that up with it'll be deemed a gift. It's just that there is no mutual inducement. This is past consideration, and you could stop there. Like, could you call it a gift afterwards? Sure, but it's of no effect because you've already said it failed for these other 2 reasons.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Shane, number 6.
All right. Tony entered into a contract with Corey for the contractor for Corey to build an outdoor bar in Tony's backyard for $2,000. The contract also included the time stipulations. The bar construction would start and finish during the weekend. Corey waits until Saturday evening to start the construction. Once he realized he would not be finished by the end of the weekend, he contacts Tony and tells him he needs to hire a helper for an additional $500 to get the bar done on time. Tony reluctantly accepts. The project was completed, but Tony only pays Corey $2,000. Is Corey entitled to the additional $500? Should I go with my gut instinct?
What's your gut telling me? You already know the answer to that question. What's your gut telling you?
Gut's telling me no.
Exactly. This is a very popular fact pattern in the world of consideration questions to get comfortable with, right? So what we had here was an original agreement for bar $2,000 by the end of the weekend. Then what happened, Shane?
Then he realized that he needed to hire somebody else.
Exactly. He needs to hire somebody else. And we want to look at the context and why he had to do it as well, because that's going to play a role ultimately. And the fact is, it says Corey waits until Saturday evening, so he's a little bit behind. And so it doesn't help at all that the reason why it's going to cost more now is because of Corey's own, laziness, essentially. So because of that, now he's saying that the bar will cost $2,500. And so that's almost essentially, you can kind of look at this now as the new contract. So you'd be analyzing here whether there was an offer, acceptance, and consideration. What you're going to argue here, right, that this was a contract, this is a new contract, and that for this one, there is no consideration because Tony was already receiving this bar, right? This is not going to be consideration because he was already receiving that under a different agreement. So therefore, there is no consideration. This then is nothing. And then so it's like, what am I getting? I'm only getting what I already contracted for, right? Especially because it's still going to be finished by the end of the weekend. Now, if it said, all right, new contract is going to be $500 more. I'm going to still finish it this weekend, but it's going to be a bar, plus I will stock that bar now. Well, then that's consideration, because now this is not just ruled out by the pre-existing duty rule, because there was no pre-existing duty rule to stock the bar, right? So this pre-existing duty rule is kind of then what comes hand in hand with the rules of modification, right, which we'll learn here in a bit. But here, this will ultimately be an invalid modification, or on the other hand, you could say there is no consideration for this agreement because he was already obligated to get the bar under this agreement. Does that make sense, Shane?
I have a question on that because I feel like a lot of us here too, in our MBE class, we've seen this question come up like many times. So what would it take for, obviously you can have a valid modification and then that be enforceable. So what would it take for that extra $500 to be enforceable?
That you would have to have additional consideration of some sort. And the example we gave is you included stocking the bar as well.
Okay. Oh, so I would have to add something to that. Like
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Because a common law contract requires additional. So this is kind of where, for some of us, it might get a little muddy. Again, this is kind of a crossover with modification, and it's just two ways to attack this. Either you can attack this by saying this is not a valid modification, or you can say that, all right, this is a contract, but this contract has no consideration because there was already a pre-existing duty to give the bar, assuming there was no stocking it, right? The original hypo. So there's two different angles at which to attack it. That makes sense now, Shane?
Yeah, 100%.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so those are our two hypos for consideration.